NFL owners have been trying to tackle this issue for months. Wrestling with questions about protests and patriotism, today the league announced its plan. All players on the field must stand and show respect to the flag and the anthem. Those not wishing to do so must stay in the locker room or out of sight. Break the rules, the team gets a fine and an on-field penalty.
We want people to be respectful of the national anthem. We want people to stand. That's all personnel, and make sure that they treat this moment in a respectful fashion.
Owners say it's a balance that helps spike the controversy that began with Colin Kaepernick in 2016, when he took a knee to protest police violence against African Americans. What started, though, as a gesture against racial inequality turned into a cultural firestorm when Donald Trump weighed in.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a off the field right now, out, he's fired.
After that, fans burned NFL jerseys. Ratings and attendance dropped. But all the while, instead of stopping, more and more players joined in. Today, the vice president tweeted it was a win for Donald Trump. The players' union, though, says it wasn't consulted and may challenge the new policy. Others say the league has caved into Trump's bullying and that the owners, who in December promised the players close to $100 million for social justice causes, are now trying to silence free speech.
This is also proof that the NFL owners, for the most part, don't care about their players. They don't care about black people. They don't care about social justice, and they don't care about making a change.
Karen Phillips says this won't make the issue go away.
I think you're probably going to see even more protests, and you're going to see an even more dramatic, radical NFL season than the one we just came off of.
The new policy passed unanimously, but already some owners are breaking from the pack. Kaepernick's former team abstained from the vote, while the chairman of the New York Jets says his players are free to protest. He'll cover any fines himself. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, New York.
Now, for more on how this plays out, I want to turn to Robert Klemke, who covers the NFL for Sports Illustrated. And so, Robert, let me pick up on Steve's last point, this question of the fact that, this may not be over. What are you hearing from players about how they might maintain the protest?
What I've heard from several players is that many of them, over the course of the last several months, after last year's summit with NFL players and owners, had been satisfied with that pledge to spend money towards programs that might have otherwise in the NFL's history been considered more partisan. Programs that fight social inequality in some of the communities that these NFL teams exist in. And many of the players that had protested were not planning on protesting this season, and now, because they're not allowed to, may just do so out of spite.
And what does that look like? I mean, how do things ratchet up from here?
Well, I think that the Jets owner, as you mentioned, set the precedent that the team will pay fines for the players. I don't think that he'll be the last person to say that, especially if you have a large number of players on any given team who decide to protest. I think that the NFL probably could have done better to solve this issue by doing nothing. Just like when Donald Trump made comments last year about the NFL players being sons of bitches and ought to be dragged off the field. I think it's going to have the effect of encouraging more protests and more animosity.
Right, and so if you take that one step further, I mean, how much harder do you think the NFL is willing to come down on players and on teams who do decide to keep the protest up?
Well, I think this was a blindsiding initiative for a lot of people, just because over the course of the last year and a half, they've involved the NFL Players Association and several players in the negotiations and in the talks about how to address these protests. And in a lot of ways, they came out of nowhere in this mandate and called it a compromise. So I think a lot of players are bracing for even more measures if the protests in fact continue.
Okay, Robert Klemke, Sports Illustrated. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, you might be wondering what happened to the NFL player who started the kneeling protests, Colin Kaepernick. Well, he's been unsigned for more than a year, essentially out of work, and he is sure that's no coincidence. Kaepernick issued a grievance with several NFL teams, accusing the league of colluding to keep him from working. His critics say he's unsigned because he's not good enough. But Kaepernick's legal team says it has internal documents suggesting otherwise, that he is, in fact, considered starting quarterback material. In the meantime, he continues to train. Now, the other thread that's worth pulling here, why the anthem is played at all at these sporting events. It's actually more unusual than you might think. Look at soccer in Europe, for example. They don't sing any anthem before a match. And even in the U.S., it's not something that evolved overnight. The Star-Spangled Banner wasn't a stock feature of baseball games until the Second World War. Back then, it was considered essential for morale. But once the war ended, the anthem stayed, even spreading to other sports. And it became core to the whole experience. In a way, it's been good for business. But funny enough, in football, players weren't even required to be on the field during the anthem until relatively recently, 2009. Since at least 2011, the U.S. military got on board, sponsoring pre-game events, and so the bond solidified between the NFL and being American.